Hello, my name is Charles Payne, CISO for Neptune Media, and I'm here with my lovely guest, Shima from Buzz HQ. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and a little bit about what your company and your organization does?
Yeah, hi Charles. Hey everyone, I'm Sushma. I'm the founder of Buzz. I come with decades of experience in building core technology products in financial technology and cybersecurity. At Buzz, we are accessible and sustainable. In today's session, we aim to break down PCI-DSS compliance for any of you, C-level suite or engineering leaders. And towards the end of the session, we hope to share a valuable checklist with you.
Actually, I appreciate that. Thank you. For the audience that doesn't know, with that said, can we talk a little bit about what, as a CISO or maybe even a CIO, some of our conundrums might be in terms of compliance and about how we can actually maybe be a little bit more proactive? I know that many of the DSS laws, PCI-DSS, isn't actually going to be relevant until 2025. But for some of us that are in bigger organizations, we really need to start preparing now, because it might take us, 6 to 8 months, maybe even a little bit longer, to actually get to where we need to be to make sure that we're fully compliant by the beginning part of that 2025 timeframe.
Sure, Charles. So, the mention of an audit or it costs a lot of money. There's money and time involved. Everyone scrambles to put, patches and band-aids on the process, and it ends up being a very reactive process. Whereas if we think about it, we can all be a little bit more proactive, and that'll go a long way in terms of how we address some of this. So anyone who's like, for example, if it's a small organization, they're just starting off in their build and in their compliance journey, they know that on day one they will need to be compliant. It's much easier to start building secure infrastructure from the ground up, and it's available to help them do it without much of an issue, as long as it's a priority. For mid-sized and large organizations, I think the important thing is first really find out where you currently stand, what your gaps are, and then form a plan to address them systematically. Like you said, usually it's a couple of months in the making before you even get the auditors involved. Finding out where you currently stand is absolutely essential. The third thing that I'll say is we look at compliance and audits very different from your core engineering practices. And if we try and bridge the gap, I think everyone, it saves a lot of heartbreak for everyone involved in any upcoming audit.
Absolutely. I'm glad we highlighted some of the other different types of organizations, like the small and the medium-sized organizations, because they definitely have different compliance needs than a large organization that we'll talk about a little bit later. Now, I know that we've been talking about PCI and DSS for a little while now, but let's step back for a moment. Let's think about what PCI DSS really is and what it really means to us. Can we get maybe an overview of what it is for people who might not be as familiar as they should be with PCI DSS?
Sure, Charles. I think what most people are familiar with is the term, say, I'm PCI compliant. If you go around and ask, do you even know what that stands for? It's usually a very high level sentence or a couple of words that come out, or usually I'm not really sure. So PCI-DSS essentially stands for Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. This was established in 2004 by major credit card companies, MasterCard, Visa, Amex, to address growing concerns about cardholder information security. This council is also responsible for the development, dissemination, enhancement, and implementation of these security standards across the industry. So these standards, while they rolled out in I think 2006, they've gone through various iterations, keeping up with the tech changes, with industry over the past 2 decades, with the most recent one that was the 4.0, which was released in 2022, and everyone who's compliant to a previous version at the moment. Is expected by 2025, I think March 2025, to be fully compliant with 4.0. Any new organization looking to be compliant must be on 4.0. Now so what is it? And who needs to deal with this? Is it applies to anyone who stores, processes, or transmits cardholder data. Now, those are simple terms, but they carry a lot of weight, and in future sections we'll figure out the different kinds of organizations that do a variety of these three things.
Yeah, so those three things, can we get a little bit of a high level, just trying to understand some of the PCI, the different types of PCI, the different levels that are defined and what those levels are, and maybe just a rough overview real quick before we get to the next slides, but maybe like a rough overview about what some of the schedules are, what some of the levels are, and what are the different types and functions of those levels.
Yeah, sure. So so PCI is a broader term. The next step for anyone looking to be PCI compliant is really find out what applies to me, what is it that I need to look at. So the first thing is to look at the volume that your entity could be processing, and that's where PCI categorizes into various levels, with level 1 being the topmost level, which is for anyone that's handling over 6 million transactions. And for level 1 entities, you need to have the audit done, an on-site audit done by a qualified security assessor. Level 2 is the next level, which is anyone handling 1 to 6 million. Level 3 is a level below, is anyone handling 20,000 to 1 million e-commerce transactions. And level 4 is anyone handling less than 20,000 e-commerce, or over 1 million across all different channels. 2 to 4, you can do a self-assessment across the questionnaire and be done with it, although a lot more regulators now require even these levels to be reviewed by QSAs, or by PCI compliant companies, etc. Now that's the volume. That's based on the volume. But do all of the PCI regulations apply to everyone? No, that depends on how you are processing, transmitting, or storing data, and that's where all of the entire suite of requirements is broken down into the requirements stay the same, but the applicability of what applies to what depends on how what the entities are doing about the cardholder data. So there's 4 broad. Yeah, go on.
So say I'm processing fewer than 20,000 transactions online per year, but maybe I'm a very successful retail store. Maybe I'm processing 50 or 60,000 transactions in my retail store. Would I then qualify to be part of a level? Would I be considered an auditable level on those scales?
On a level 4 in that case.
Okay, because it's not just e-commerce anymore, right? It's also considering all different types of ways I can process transactions.
Yeah.
Okay. If I'm processing a lot of transactions online, but I'm also processing a lot of transactions in the store, how would some of the other schedules affect me then? I see that a Schedule A, for example, is typically just for the e-commerce merchants that are maybe outsourcing some of their cardholder data. It's going to give me maybe 20 to 25 compliance questions. But then I see a Schedule B where it says it's for merchants using a standalone dial-up terminal, or basically like a swipe terminal. And then that's going to give me 30 to 40 questions. But what do I need to do if, for example, I'm maybe a bigger company? Say I'm like a massive retail store. Maybe I'm like a chain, maybe like a Walmart or a Target. Then let's walk through some of the different things I might have to do. Because obviously, if I'm a Walmart, Target, or a big box store, I'm a very successful retail organization. You know, I'm probably going to be level 1 at that point in time. I'm definitely going to be processing more than 6 million transactions online. But then I'm going to be processing, you know, even more in the physical stores. You know, with that said, what might be some of the things I might be looking forward to in Schedule C or Schedule D?
See, they're two separate things. The levels are the volumes that you're dealing with. The types is how are you performing the cardholder transactions? What data are you storing? So, for example, if you're an online store that is handling over 6 million transactions, and I will just take an example of a large online store, but all of your payment processing is completely outsourced to, for example, PayPal. You do nothing with that data. You don't host it, nothing. In that case, an SAQ-A will apply to you. Yeah, but but the same store, maybe you're a SaaS company, yeah, that what's a good example of a fast-growing SaaS company that that outsources the payment information, yeah, but also stores the cardholder, like you do it in an iframe and you direct it. Then it gets a little bit more complex. Now, if you're a Target, for example, or a Walmart, and you also end up stored, because you've got those terminals, you could be doing 110 million transactions, but if you end up storing any cardholder data within your network, yeah, the highest level of SAQ-D applies to you. So there's the volume, which is, which defines who comes and does your assessments, etc. Then what category you fall into is by these SAQ A, B, C, D, and there's a few variants amongst those. So slightly, there's a slight nuance, but the moment you talk about, if you end up storing any data, for example, we've got companies that have there's a lot of subscriptions at play, right? Anything, for example, you've got a Spotify subscription that auto renews, which essentially means that they likely store your credit card information on their servers. And soon as you talk about storing any cardholder data, the maximum level starts applying to you.
Oh, wow. So then it seems like maybe for like a Schedule A, then as long as we're outsourcing the payment information, a Stripe, a PayPal, or what have you, it seems like we're probably only going to hit a Schedule A. And it seems like maybe a Schedule B is for anybody who's not online, but they have a terminal. It seems like maybe the Schedule C then is just for the people that have an internet connected payment system, but they don't actually store any of the data in which they swipe or they process. But then if I'm any type of store, it doesn't matter what level I am, if I process a few transactions or if I process millions, I'm still going to get part of Schedule D if I hold any of that information on my network, especially if I'm trying to do like automatic renewals or something like that. So I'm going to be bound no matter what level I am to Schedule D if I'm actually holding or storing credit card information.
Absolutely. And Schedule D is the most comprehensive, because that's where all of the PCI requirements start applying to you. That has 329 questions at a high level, and you can keep breaking that down further depending on who your auditor is.
Amazing. So I know that in our handout we're going to give out some information about some of the basics of understanding and some of the other complicated ways to understand PCI and their types, just to make sure that everybody can be on the right track. So for the moment, I won't highlight those or speak about those. But if we go back and we try to talk about some of the nuance factors or even some of the key factors of PCI compliance, I know that there's maybe 12 different requirements, but 6 broad areas. I figured it might be easier just to talk about what those 6 broad areas are first, and then maybe we can break down what those 12 key requirements are. But I figured I would start with the 6 broader areas.
Yeah, cool. So, now that we've got the basics covered in terms of what levels and types they are, let's talk about, what are these things that PCI is trying to address. And I feel it's not rocket science. It's for anyone who you start handling any sensitive data. These should not naturally normally apply to everyone. Now, the first one is building and maintaining a secure network. That essentially means, do we have the right firewall configurations in place? Yeah. To how are we protecting the cardholder data if it's in terminals? Have we changed the vendor supplied defaults that come as part of it? The second one is, now that you've got a network, is you storing the data. How are you protecting the data both at rest and in transmit, right? So that it stays secure. The third area is vulnerability management. Is essentially, is anyone accessing that data? So the endpoints and where the data are, those servers and endpoints patched with the latest vulnerabilities? How often do you do it? Is there the right antivirus in place? When we build and deploy, are we building and deploying, secure code, for example? And that's to keep up with the growing suite of vulnerabilities that's happening at the moment. Then we say, then the next area is, who can access this data? Do we have the right access control in place? Is multi-factor enabled? Are we being too permissive in terms of who's accessing it? Sorry about that. In cases where you've got POS terminals, for example, it is or you host data on your own data centers, is physical access to those machines controlled? The fifth area is monitoring and testing networks, which is, are we all the what's happening at an infrastructure level with API access, etc. And if you don't know what's going wrong, you'll never know how to address it. And someone could come in, sit there, get all of your data, go back. So monitoring and testing is plays an absolutely essential role. The last, of course, is, do we have the right information security policy in place? And that's applicable to everyone across, irrespective of whatever SAQ level you may be. It's essential to have an information security
So it sounds like those are the 6 broad areas.
policies. Yeah.
So those are the 6 broad areas, and then just to highlight again, those 12 key requirements are, requirement number 1, installing and maintaining some type of firewall configuration standards, and then obviously number 2, I think I find the most humor in for requirement number 2, where it's basically you can't leave anything with the vendor default supplied passwords or security parameters. I think that's pretty interesting.
It is, but you'll be surprised to find, just how easy it is to how many people just leave that in there. Yeah, I'll give you a very simple and basic example. Anyone who's installing a database, yeah, if you're installing a Postgres database, by default, your master username is Postgres. 98% of the folks will have Postgres as the default admin. The same as you're doing a web server. Absolutely, the default username password will be there in a majority of the cases. So even though you find it humorous, it's likely there for a reason.
Yeah, I won't talk about ever making those mistakes. But yeah, that's it's good. So it's good to know that that's actually called out though, and it's actually it's labeled. Looks like requirement number 3 was like storing the cardholder data, like making sure that you always protect it. Number 4 is like for the data submission and then the securing of your public networks. There's a lot of these requirements, and of course we'll post these slides and this information after this webinar. But it just seems like with some things seems like common sense, but at the same token, sometimes again we get in a rush or something might happen and maybe we forget. So I think that these audits, while they are mostly common sense, I think those checks and those preventative measures are always a great effort to make sure that we can try to stay on top of security. And just to transition into maybe how PCI is actually involved in engineering, it seems like we need to have a security mindset, a security mindset first. Like it's great to do security, but at the same token, it's better to have engineered the security in the process of already doing and accomplishing a goal or task. And I'll let you speak a little bit more about how we'd actually want to do PCI, maybe PCI security in engineering.
Yes, let me get into those details. But first, when you said most of these requirements, if you just look at them, they're absolutely common sense, right? But it's strange that common sense isn't all that common. People try and brush it down or say, hey, we don't have the time to do it at the moment. We'll look at it later. And the reason why, in my opinion, I think what compliances and audits do is it's almost like a headmaster or a school exam. We prepare for things only when you've got an exam to take, for example, right? Or not just because it's the right thing to do. You must know your your basics. And these are basics. So for example, let me give you some specific examples, and I will base it on public cloud services, AWS in particular, but the same things are applicable across services, or even if you host your own data center. Now, the first one, which is about installing and maintaining a firewall, is how do you do that in a consistent manner? Is you use infrastructure as code. You can use Terraform / CloudFormation configurations to automate your infrastructure deployments that meet those standards. You try and isolate the sensitive data, which is your cardholder data, from the rest of your operational data. For example, hey, we've performed all of your other user journey flows, and your cardholder data must be kept separate. So isolate access to those networks by having the right firewall rules in place. Just be conscious of not being overly permissive. Then if we talk, so this is, you've got your network made up and built to standards. Then when you're storing the data, see, encryption and tokenization, they've been things that we've spoken about for a long time. And usually the biggest hurdle, at least on the encryption side, has been on key management. And that's where, when audits come calling, they will say, okay, hey, you do encryption, but how are you managing your keys? Are you rotating them properly? Who's managing it? With services like AWS and other cloud providers, managing your customer managed keys with the right rotation in place is fairly easy. All you need to do is need to enable it, and the whole management is managed outside. That helps keep your data completely encrypted and secure, because we need to know that while we can do our best, the data can absolutely fall into the wrong hands. If it does, can tokenization picked up a lot of steam, and that's around, just scrambling words, so that it doesn't deal with encryption and decryption. So those are just various strategies for masking your data and encrypting, so it stays secure. Now you've got your data, got your network. How are we even accessing it, right? Who can access it? Again, IAM policies or identity access management comes into play here. Having the right roles, so you're not doing user by user and such. Having the right roles, access to this data, and reviewing them periodically, also rotating them. So there is role segmentation. So the person who's developing doesn't have access to production, for example. Then one of the things that we spoke about earlier is monitoring. Monitoring any changes to the configuration. So, for example, a user goes in and opens a port, opens a port outside of 8443, and you want to have them locked. So, are there alerts that go off? Are there alerts that go off when you've got user activity that is absolutely, it's not the norm? So do we have the right real-time monitoring systems in place to do it? Are we collecting all of the data? And there are tools that are available, either, so AWS, for example, has things like AWS config, which will enable PCI configs for your entire application, and certain changes are happening that should not. There are cloud posture management tools like Security Hub within AWS that will tell you, where do you stand. There are dashboards that you can build in CloudWatch environments and integrate with the whole alerting system to let to manage your SOC. So you don't even have to have a plethora of different tools and get there, which was harder earlier. So it's much easier to build some of these things within our engineering pipeline. I'll give you a few more examples. When we say address our vulnerabilities, it need not, up until now, people do VAPT tests because an audit requires it, and it usually ends up being very cumbersome. But things like our systems, there's a latest vulnerability in the market or a malware. Is my EC2 system secure? Is my container-based image secure? And many of these we can now integrate it into our CI/CD pipelines. There's fairly inexpensive tools like Intruder that help you integrate vulnerability checks into your pipeline using Tenable and OpenVAS in the background. There are AWS
which
tools
one
like Inspector. It's Intruder.
Intruder. I haven't heard of that one before.
Okay, it's a smallish company, and what they've built is pretty cool. On top of because vulnerability assessment is non-trivial and not everyone can do it. So there are industry tools like OpenVAS, which is more open source, and Tenable that manage the entire that go and source all of the latest vulnerabilities and zero-day vulnerabilities, etc. Intruder is a tool which is, because I have to go in and set up Tenable on my instance. It's non-trivial, and you require a security team to handle it. Whereas this is, I've got 4 targets to be scanned, scan them regularly, and alert me, and you can also put it in, along with your CI/CD pipelines. So that's an external tool. If it's pure AWS. I'm sure other companies. There's tools like Inspector, AWS Inspector, that you can use to manage it. There are tools like in your CI/CD pipeline, you've got a container, and you of course are building with tons of open source dependencies. We all remember the Log4j horror from a few years ago. There are tools like Sneak, for example, that are only focused on finding security vulnerabilities in your container, in your dependencies, and quite easy to plug that into your CI/CD pipeline, for example. And of course, whatever we're trying to protect, we need to have the right backups and recovery plans in place. Again, fairly easy to manage if you've got the availability zones and regions enabled within your within your network. So at a high, I can continue into the details, Charles. But overall, the one thing that I'd like to highlight is all of this. If you're conscious, and there's no better time to start than now, it's easy to build it into your security culture with a little bit of foresight and encouragement, because the tools are available, which is harder a while back.
Absolutely. So for say I got through all of that minutia, because that's a lot of stuff I got to do. When I finally get there, how do I go about getting an auditor involved, and what's the process for that, and what's next?
So of course, before we get the auditors involved, it's essential to understand, do an internal review first and find out where you stand, because you don't want to spend all that time and money and be surprised and panic, get the auditor in before you're even ready for it. So either do an internal review on your own, or get an InfoSec architect on board to help you with it. So find out where you currently stand. Organize a lot of the information. So if you understand what the requirements are, then you can go in and collect relevant evidences and keep that in place, so that it's easier when the audit starts. Yeah, I mean, keep your staff must be trained and know what does this audit mean, and how are we building, and what are we trying to do, etc. And most importantly, we worry when auditors come, but we've got to look at them as more as partners and people who are there to help us be more secure, and not like, hey, there's no reason to be defensive about it. Look at them to help you improve your security posture.
Right. Yeah, I definitely understand that the auditors are more like an ally. We definitely need their help. We need your help to try to find out where some of our shortfalls are, where some of the other nuances are that we need to resolve. We obviously, if we could do it by ourselves, we wouldn't have to have professional talent to assist. But I know that talking about some of the key changes in PCI, especially 4.0, that's going to be taking effect in 2025. There's a lot of little nuances that actually take effect. It's like different levels, different schedules, different rules, and hundreds of questions potentially. It's like, can we speak about any of the new stuff that's going to be coming in 2025 that we need to start preparing for now in 2024?
Yes, absolutely, Charles. So in 4.0, some of the key changes essentially are that they've updated it so that it's a little bit more flexible and customizable in terms of keeping up with the times, in terms of also keeping up with the growing number of threats out there. So one of the key change is multi-factor authentication. So up until now, only when you're remotely trying to access, you needed an MFA. But now it's applicable for anyone trying to access cardholder data. So again, if you think about why they would do it, because keys are compromised, or password, for example, is there's also some more changes in terms of being more proactive in terms of how often you get your testing done. Up until now, you could get it get your compliance yearly or on a slightly longer schedule. Now they want at least on a monthly basis, if not more. So you need to monitor your security posture more continuously. That's where if your CI/CD pipeline that's integrated with security come into play. Up until now, it was do it because you want to protect it, but if a compliance comes calling, the chances that will do it is way more. They've also eased some requirements in terms of if you've got a slightly different encryption method that you want to use. That's where tokenization is very big at the moment. And you can prove that your data will stay protected. That will that's a lot flexible. That's providing the entities a lot more flexibility than what was before. So just in terms of some of the key that can you hear me?
Absolutely. So in closure, we know that some of the key takeaways that we have are there are 6 categories, 12 key factors in or key requirements in those 6 categories. We've learned that there are 4 schedules, an A, B, C, and D, and there's 4 different levels, a 1, 2, 3, 4. We've also learned some of the other ways that we can help mitigate some of those requirements, or actually comply would be more of the correct things. But what else might I be missing or forgetting about that we need to be mindful about?
So I think the one of the things which is a little tough for people to start on is, here's all of these requirements. How do I know where I currently stand? And so to ease that starting off process, we've created a checklist of say all of the 12 requirements. Very, very simple questions, around 4 to 5 by every requirement. That will force people to think, hey, do I does it apply to me first? Second, if it applies to me, do I have this in place? Which will give you a good starting point and something to think about before we get started. Because see, the journey towards any audit is really first realizing what is it that I need to do, and that's, and then you can go through hundreds of pages of of the PCI requirements. But getting started and where I currently stand, what do I need to do, requires a little bit more thinking, and then you can prioritize your efforts towards it. Yeah. So that's that. I just would like to call that out towards the end. And again, we're trying to get there to secure our environment. And remember, we're also the users of all of these services. So you could be leading an organization which handles cardholder security, but you're also using a lot of services where you store your sensitive information, and you'd want that to be protected. So apply it to your own org as well.
Absolutely. So I guess in sum, or in summary, what would be the easiest way for someone to get a hold of you, and where could they find the sheets at to get some more information? Where can they find the handouts, the checklists?
So I think what we'll do is post this session along with along with the recording of this session. We'll share the checklist, and also, you can always ping me on LinkedIn. It's there. My website is buzzhq.io. There's plenty of information there. You can download it from there directly. So yeah, there's a number of ways to reach out. They can reach out to you, and you'll point them to me.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate that. So if someone was trying to reach out to you, they can, I'm assuming they can reach out to you on LinkedIn. They can go to your website, which is buzzhq.io, if I remember correctly. And then they can also go to your website, which is buzzhq.io. And then they can request the checklist and all the additional information there as well.
That's right.
Terrific. So we'll post a link in the description to your website and to the information, so they can follow that along, and they can actually go get the checklist and go get the information that they need to help them with the compliance audit. I really appreciate your time today.
I do hope thank you, Charles, and I do hope this session was helpful. Sorry about the goof up early in the session. You need to know what you do like this. So I don't know what happened. We were at it for a long time, so
yes, we were
probably
we were
technology to work messed up my head.
Yeah, I blame my computer. It had a mind of its own. It was like, oh, no more audio, no more video, and disconnects. I'm like, okay, that's great. And we try to post it to LinkedIn and into YouTube at the same time, and neither one of those worked. So we'll just have to go back and repost this after the fact. But still, nonetheless, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.